I will just give you a very short presentation, so I'm not sure we will come back to the right schedule, but maybe. 10 minutes with a lot of questions there, not many lessons, and mainly where we are failing or where we have major strategical issues to discuss in our own institution. In a few words, NEARCH is a French national public institution depending from two ministries, culture and research, and we are dealing with this so-called development-led preventive archaeology. And I will come back in a sense to Europe, trying because it's not so easy to take some examples in Europe of what we are doing around World Heritage Sites. Just some elements you all know, but and with some very bad English there. But the idea is to come back to some principles. Of course, Malta Convention, and there and behind and around, and the question of the polluter pays principle. And in a sense, this is clearly a strong link with environmental sciences and ecology. And I think that Sander also and others will come back to the link in between our own principles, schemes, and these environmental things. And of course, sustainability is in the middle of all this. And this principle of polluter pays, of course, this is a little bit provocative, but it's paying the right to destroy in a sense, or paying the right to pollute, and how we mitigate with this money or with these efforts. In a sense, if we look a little bit in a very broad perspective of development-led archaeology, is archaeology as a compensation of destroying heritage. And there you come back to what Willems was talking about in his papers on in situ preservation as other ways of preserving, but in situ preservation means, in a sense, no development-led archaeology or another development-led archaeology. And of course, you have several implementation systems depending on the countries you are or the place you are. You have public monopoly, almost public monopoly in some countries, Greece, France, and others, and around the world. You have some countries that made a choice of private sector for this development-led archaeology. And of course, you are in between. As you said, there is not one model. Okay, again, very bad English there, but archaeological heritage as a non-renewable resources. This is something, of course, coming from, again, from environmental and ecology disciplines, saying, can we see this heritage, material heritage, and maybe also intangible heritage, as something that is not that we cannot renew, and in this sense, we are taking a very static perspective on heritage, but this is clearly one of the main strategic points for the development of development-led archaeology, and we can discuss that also. But at the same time, of course, this is there is a common universal, if you want, a value for archaeological heritage. So this is leading very clearly to something that there is no solution at the national in a national system or at a national level for all that. It's an international question, and then of course we have all these agreements and conventions, and Malta, and we see that what is done by ICOMOS around UNESCO, by ICAM, and by all the public bodies there around these conventions is clearly the point where we have to be in my point of view. And there is a paradox, of course, in between local and global community, and then we have to discuss what is this there, and the question of the value, and then I will let the experts talk a little bit about this notion of value in between, again, this local and global value, as Alex was explaining, these layers of value in between the Turkish states and country. And of course, we have exactly the same in France. So in a sense, as you know, it's a designed distraction. It leads mainly, 99% of the time, to the destruction of sites for study. And the argument is that when we study there, we preserve. And sometimes, of course, we'll leave the things on the field. But the problem is, of course, is where there is no standing buildings, nothing to see. What remains? What remains for the communities, at least local communities? Knowledge, And if I well understood, people, Felipe, if you're right, or maybe I understood the same thing with Arek, the question is not mainly, the interest is not on this part. If I well understood what you were saying, the interest is somewhere else. And there we have a major problem for us, at least, because all these sites, what is remaining? And of course, then you enter this non-ending discussion you had also in the faculty, and we have, of course, in France, in our institutional system, preservation, conservation, you can say management, of course, there, versus research, knowledge, and we are lucky in France not having the notion of heritage management yet. So all this is archaeology for us, but of course inside there are strong and very strong discussions. Of course, the idea is a state sustainable planning. This is the idea, the main idea, again coming from the ecology. So we have the pressure from sustainable principles. This is the idea for us. Environmental constraints, of course, frogs and all these things. And then if we go a little bit further, and what we see now is an evolution to less land artificialization. The common idea is that we have to do less construction, and this is meaning clearly less archaeology for us in our field of expertise. In a sense, we are under new regulations coming again from outside, so we gain with the polluter pays principles a field of activity, but now with the evolution of the environmental principles and policies, we are again in a new regulation, and in a sense we are very passive. And this is the main point. I think you all said we are very passive in this point, and we are clearly looking at a very big institution, public, with a lot of public money, that if we are not changing our system and strategy, we will go for a disaster. And this is not meaning going for a whole private sector. This is clearly changing our public strategy on that. And of course, we have these guys, the citizens, the communities, always there somewhere, and telling us, and there is a lot of pressure now for not developing the country without control. This is clear. If you want to build an airport now in France, you have major problems. And this is pressure for a more sustainable development, and we have to define what is there, of course, including less. So we have occupying sites, demonstration, strike, violence, and not only political pressure, of course. All this is clearly not only a big deal for developing companies, because for them it's very clear that they have to sustain their own economical model, but it's also a big deal for us as archaeologists, and mainly because we are the first to intervene on the field. And we see that we are passive, because all this is done for environmental protection, and mostly not including points and revendication on heritage. Even when you are in a very particular touchy zone in terms of heritage, they're always coming to protect environment, and we are not part of this environment. England made a choice of this historical environment concept, introducing and trying to introduce, but we have no such a thing in France, and this is clearly divided. So if we go a little bit further, what are our choices, in a sense? Big choices. One is development-led archaeology has to be the choice of local communities? Yes, we want you to investigate if there is heritage, what heritage, etc. Is this, in the case of France at least, the way post-Malta archaeology will be? But there the question comes, what is the interest of communities? And if I heard what you said, and what we experience, okay, maybe two things. Tourism development, it means monies for the structure. Does this mean identity definition to be very large? Of course, and there is many things in this, and of course all this is politics. And the question is, do you want that? Do we want that? And if not, or if we want something a little bit in between, we cannot be completely passive on that. And of course, a good sample to look at that is World Heritage Sites, and mainly and mostly in France, because why it's a good sample? Because there is a high international interest, of course, a national interest. It is into many regulation systems. It is fragile because of this interest. Many people coming, many political discussions, many interest, and then fragile, of course. And there you have something very strong in this, is the development of infrastructures around or in the site. So theoretically, there is a strong need for preventive or development-led archaeology around these sites. And if you look at the main examples, you see that there is mainly nothing on these sites. Indigenous. If you look at the non-European reality, and then you see, okay, we have the recommendation of our European perspective, Malta Convention and things, and you say you should do that. This is very interesting, of course. But when you look at European sites, this is not the same way. So I will give you 3 or 4 examples very quickly of French and 2 abroad, example of what we are doing, and try to give a sense of that. Okay, the first one, a very interesting one, is the Mont Saint-Michel. This is very hard for me to explain that. Okay, you all know this place, and the point is that the bay is gradually silted up. That's it. Huh? Okay. So this is an island in a sense for most of the year, and depending on of course on the sea level. And they want to keep this aspect of an island. And this is the first question. This is nothing to do with archaeology, but this is why. Why we want to change the natural course, because this is clearly partly a non-human intervention. Why we want to change it and keep this thing as it is. And then you see that this is an heritage question, a heritage management question. But clearly this was not dealt by heritage managers. It was dealt by environment professionals, saying, yes, it was this, we have to keep this natural way of being like it is. They said to keep the maritime aspect of the Mont Saint-Michel. This is something very strong, because of course afterwards you have huge major changing. They built this one. And this one is a quite very strange dam in the middle of this place. And the idea of the dam is keeping the water, I'm not a technician on that, but keeping the water and then getting back the water at a certain moment to keep the maritime aspect of the Mont Saint-Michel. Why not? And then of course you have to change everything. Change parking places, change roads and circulation. And then you have this preventive archaeology project where we were there, excavating around the sites. And then you see that the question is very, okay, if you take this at this step, we are working on changing the overall system of the place. So we have, of course, to see which heritage and what is there in terms of archaeology. But if you come back just a few moments before and you ask the communities, it means very few people living there. The community is a global community there. Of course, it's Chinese, Dutch, even Australian also, going to this place. When you ask them, they will say, yes, we have to maintain the maritime aspect because we want nice pictures. But when you ask the people that are working on the site, they're telling you, no, we need the road, we need the parking. Why are you doing that? We need to access there because we need to work there. It's our place of living. And of course the monks is a very small sample. And some people living there also. So you see that there is a major contradiction in between what we are doing and the community living there. No problem at all, of course, because we have the state, and when the state decides in France, you know that this is there is no discussion on that. Very nice halls, of course, very a huge amount of knowledge from that, from the construction of the site, but clearly not common decision. Another example is the Strasbourg Cathedral. Again, as you can imagine, World Heritage Site in December, a lot of people coming there. And we had the preventive archaeology there because the project was to enhance the facilities for visiting the cathedral, something a little bit different from the other example. But again, the idea was to, for the municipality, so this is quite local community, the decision was we have too many tourists, we have to change the way entering the cathedral and facilities, etc. And then the question was, of course, preventive archaeology. But as you know, when you do that, like in Saint-Denis, near a cathedral like this, it's months. It's amazing amount of knowledge, material, and things. So it was a very huge problem for the municipality dealing with this excavation. But at least there you see another example of the knowledge of the building structure of the cathedral and the Roman camp that was there also before, and a lot of these things. The gaining knowledge of that went directly into the public outreach capacities of the cathedral and of the teams. But I said public outreach capacities. This has nothing to do with the people living around the cathedral. This is linked with public outreach of the site. This again. Okay, there you see in France, quite easy. State, decision, no discussion. Preventive archaeology, no discussion with communities. Communities is you vote or you don't vote. If you vote, then you are in the community, and then the people, and I have to say that 40% of the people never go to vote. And there you have Anchor, something completely different, of course, as you can see, with some people going there. And then we made a project with a private company and with the national authorities to try to mitigate something very strange, which is an airport. There is an airport on the site. Don't ask me why. I can explain you a little bit, but it's a very whole story. And there, we made archaeology, of course, with training people, with exchanging, because they wanted to extend the airport. But the real question is, why extending an airport as heritage professionals? Why extending an airport on such a site? This is the main question, but we are not involved in this question. This is, again, the passive position we have in management of heritage. And this is the major point we have to, not to solve, but we have to design in our own strategy in preventive archaeology. It means we are going to open a center for heritage management at INRAP. We have to do that. To be at this stage and say, no, please, no airports. But if we do that, we have less income, less archaeology. Okay, this is a very, very particular point. But in France, it's very clear. So we are there, and we are quite a little bit confused with that. And another example, this one quite straightforward, is the Ministry of Culture of Algeria. Algiers metro line in the center of Algiers. 10 years of preventive archaeology with INRAP in the center, Caspa, a World Heritage Site. A lot of discoveries, condition a little bit difficult because of the building projects. And this is also very nice. The question is, we want they want to do a museum of sites on the site, and the question is, okay, very nice, but who will use the metro line? What is the price of the metro line? What are we gaining knowledge of the city, and what they will of course show to the public? Because I have to tell you, half of this is colonial, and in this colonial archaeology there is destruction of some things that is very important for the heritage of Algeria. So for us as French, it's very strange. We can say, okay, we are scientific people outside of this question. But as we are trying to say in the symposium, this is clearly not the case. Again, here. So that's it. What benefit of preventive archaeology for people around World Heritage Sites? Not very clear. Like Arek said, clearly this is not very clear for us. What is the benefit of a lot of public outreach? Some sample of population well involved. In a midterm perspective, to be very honest, there is nothing. We have no strategy for midterm perspective in our intervention. mainly where there is no standing building. You go there, there are houses, there is nothing on archaeology. But as you said for Konya, in the nearby city you have a very nice museum with everything inside. But in the place there is nothing. We're gaining knowledge, of course, for better public outreach policies. We're developing new sites around World Heritage Sites. This is interesting. This is something that we are gaining. Of course, we are finding new sites. So when a site is overcrowded, the new sites can also be used for putting tourism or mitigating the tourism impact. So in a sense, in this way, preventive archaeology is contributing to sustainable management of World Heritage Sites. But still, very few archaeology is done. And we will ask Ian to give us some elements on that further. And the real question for me, if we look at that on sustainable thing around World Heritage Sites, is this one. Is it sustainable to add so many sites on the list? Which sites? What for? And when you look at the COP21 agreement, again, environmental things, we have to try to find a way to deal with that. You are polluted and developed. We have to pollute to develop. Please, if you want us to sign and contribute, pay. You have all your sites. This is for our sites, World Heritage Sites, all around Europe, and you want us, we want ours. You want us to have less. Should we pay for that? And I think there we should come back to something in this idea. Is maybe the less is again the better, and we have to be involved in this discussion, and that's it. Thank you.